Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Submitted for Your Approval, the weekly card review show for Collective, the community-created card game where you make the cards. I'm Stranger Side, your host and community ambassador for Collective. I am joined today by my faithful co-host, Grief.
Howdy, folks.
And my other co-host, Empty Folder.
Hello, everyone.
I just want to jump straight into it. Sorry we didn't have a guest today, guys. Starting with the N3ON Caster. Is a 2-drop, 1/2, 2-drop mind, 1/2 human arcanist from Aesthetica, which is why I picked this card. Agile and entrance give +1/+1 permanently to an ally unit. I'm guessing the weird out of orderness was to prevent like a text crunch issue or something, which is funny that makes sense. But hey, it's whatever. First of all, the art. I do think VQ GAN outdid itself this time. This is a VQ GAN piece, and it ended up working out really good. I still feel that this is an actual piece that makes sense, and it does have the Aesthetica aesthetic. It really does feel very cyberpunky. As far as the effect, I do like it's simple, and yet it still gives me ideas or thoughts about how to maybe do something with it. Obviously, you can... because it is an entrance, I think you can target itself with it, because it doesn't say another ally. And so you could have this just be, if you have means to repeatedly flicker this, Cupcake being one way, you could make this into a big little agile unit, or you can use this to buff up your other stuff and get creative. Also in Legacy with the other N3ON package. Grief, what do you think of this?
Pretty efficient 2-drop, can actually buff your 1-drop in the N3ON deck. You can flicker it, you can reanimate it, you can even use it with contingency, or how that card is called, where you banish it and then return it to play, and so on and so forth. Works on its own or in tandem with other units. It's a pretty good aggressive tool that actually you can use probably in Standard and in Legacy.
Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly fine, simple card. You have it's just a 2-mana, 2/3 agile as a sort of last resort if you don't draw anything else to synergize with it, which isn't bad.
And so, yeah, it has a nice place in aggro. Maybe it can lead to some more fun shenanigans later down the line, but we will see. Okie dokie then. Reveal the Mosaic is a 4-drop mind ritual from Sweet Outlet with draw a card of each affinity. Someone brought up, I don't think this is the only version of this card we have in the game. I think we have a 4-drop and another affinity that does the exact same thing minus the ritual tribe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I can't remember what it's called. It's in the Legacy.
I don't think that. Oh, the pot. The rainbow pot?
Yeah,
I don't remember what it's called. I think that's like... I don't remember how that
functions
works.
Very differently, though.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking of it as something else. Anyways, maybe someone else subbed something that was like this. Is a flavor bit. I think this is really neat. Talking about the Mosaic, getting some mentions of that in. And that's Mistress of Ceremonies. I think they're in the art, right? So I don't really have too much to say about this. Grief, what did you want to say about this?
Perfect KM card. In Legacy, you can play this in a blue adjacent deck, probably red adjacent, green adjacent, depending on if you're using any kind of shifter shenanigans, since you get rebound on that card. Still, then it costs 5 mana. Overall, it's actually just a neat little toolbox to either get the cards that you need in your affinity, or to just hard draw 3 cards, which is basically only what KM does, and partially promo, depending on what your game plan is looking like. Actually not as powerful as people were making it out to be as a 4-cost card or affinity 5-cost card, even with rebound. And yeah, it remains to be seen how well this will be utilized. I think KM could play it at 3 mana.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, after the KM update goes through, we'll have to see like where everything fits in. I do think there'll be like way less KM decks running around. So maybe this will find a home in like some mind decks or something as a tutor.
Yeah, just grabbing a nice little splashy card could work. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, it's just a simple kind of utility effect, but the Sleepy Snowbear is a 1-drop neutral 1/2 elemental bear from Terrador with Awaken 2, gain +2/+1. Awaken, for those of you who've never seen it before, is a new, well, it never got in before, but it starts at X. X is reduced by 1 at the end of the turn. When X equals 0, activates this card's Awaken effect. So it's basically sort of a delayed summon. Originally, I was really fond of this effect, and I started thinking about it more and more, and I realized that the problem I think that Awaken is going to face going forward is it comes in basically 2 flavors. Awaken 1 and Awaken 2. Awaken 3 would require a very, very sticky unit or some sort of specific build. It's a lot of the Awaken effects we see going forward, I'm betting, are going to be concentrated at Awaken 1 and Awaken 2. We'll see if I end up being right or not. This one in particular, I like how it does it. It's a 1-drop that has a chance to get bigger. It's simple, and it's a good way to introduce the effect. As far as things to run this in, anything that just needs a nice, good 1-drop. So I could see running this in a lot of decks, especially because it is neutral. Empty, what do you think of this?
I mean, like you said, this is a great way to introduce the mechanic. It's like the most basic this mechanic can be. I think there's a lot more opportunities with Awaken than like you give it credit for. You could have like higher Awaken effects and then have a trigger that like lowers them artificially. Like maybe you're running a Rage deck and you have a Rage -1 Awaken or something. Or you could have oversetted units that have a negative Awaken effect. Like maybe they get smaller after a few rounds to deal damage to yourself. I think there's a lot of design space with this mechanic that is yet to be explored.
Grief, what do you think about this?
Basically, I have to echo what MD just said. There's a lot of potential with Awakening as a mechanic. Yeah, sure, if you go for payoffs, you can say, okay, lower the Awakening amount for immediate payoffs, but that's just the boring way to do it. The more interesting designs will actually come with the more interesting applications of Awakening. You can even design build around win cons, deck building tools, whatever, with higher Awakening values, where this is my time bomb. I put it there on the board, deal with it. If you cannot actually deal with this until final countdown hits the 20th turn, I win the game. And so on and so forth.
Something akin to Darksteel Reactor from Magic or something like that.
A Darksteel Reactor, a final countdown, whatever.
Yeah. So we'll see where this goes going forward, but it's a nice, cute little utility unit that I think is worth featuring, especially because how many times it's been subbed. And it finally got in. So now we're going to talk about the active cards. These are on the subreddit for you to vote on now, starting with the Service Synth is a 2-drop Spirit 2/1 Ox Robot from Animostra with Agile and Summon. Create a copy of the last food you played in hand. So in hand there is redundant. I don't know why that's there. So this is for Animostra, which is based around furries in their different types and different archetypes for all those furries. So they don't have a lot of archetypes right now. We're trying to get some started. There's a lot of cards on the sub. Upvote them. I have a stake in this realm. And also, I just really, really like the effort that Free Whisker and Go Kristana put into these cards. As far as this goes, nice little 2-drop. I do think it's weird that for food, this particular effect is worded in is a weird effect because it's not the food you want to be playing into. Usually, food wants to have one big blow up turn, and this is not. You're playing it, it's gaining all the benefit of a food effect if this is your big blow up turn. And then now you have to play that food again. So you have one card that kind of slips under the radar. I don't know. I think it plays a little weirdly for what it does. But there might be some sort of strat I'm missing. Flavor-wise, I absolutely love it, though. Grief, what do you think of this?
One deck and one deck only. And like I see, this is useful in Honeypot. Because it creates a copy of a honeypot that you just
I can get you your honeypot back.
Overall, I am not really that familiar with the food deck. I think MG is the better address for that. But overall, it's an interesting card. It has immediate impact due to the fact that regardless of what food you've just played, you still have an agile attacker. as long as it's not killing this unit, it's all fine and dandy. But yeah, it's basically just food deck filler. And by the way, I downloaded all in master guides. I think Empty, take it from here.
Yeah, so for standard food, the way you want to play this is that deck relies heavily on Dustport Chef to get the food down to 0. And when you have 0 cost food, then this is pretty good because you can just like put it into your chain and then everything after it will be stronger. Probably like the best card in food right now is Banana. I don't really know how to pronounce that, but it's a food unit that you can play for 0, and then the feed effect makes bananas, which you can also play for 0 off Dustport Chef. And it gets really ridiculous if you get multiple of them out in one turn. So this really helps for that, but it does not help with the food high roll problem, which has been a really big issue with the deck. Is that it either really blows you out or it does absolutely nothing.
Okay. So it has some usefulness in the existing food deck. I feel it would be maybe a little clunky to play, but I still think I really enjoy this card on Flavor Grounds and whatnot. But it might need a little rework. We'll see. It's sitting at 2 right now, which isn't great, but okay, let's talk about Ghost in the Storm. It is a 2-drop spirit 3/2 elemental specter from nowhere in particular. With summon, give the top card of your opponent's deck Ethereal. Again, with Ethereal, I thought it was a little quirky. I was kind of curious to see how it was used. I really do like this application of Ethereal. The idea of forcing your opponent to sort of a pseudo discard any option you can take away from your opponent is actually pretty useful. That could be sometimes as powerful as taking resources away from your opponent. The thing about this, and I think this is, well, it's sitting at 6, so it's doing better than I thought. I'm not sure, and I talked already with Zinker about this. I'm not sure if 1 is enough, because especially if this comes down on 2, it's actually pretty powerful, pretty useful. In later turns, rearranging people's card plays is just not as good. But it is a useful disruption tool, and it is a new use of the keyword. So I think it's really innovative and cool, and I think the VQ Gan art on this is great. Grief, what do you think?
I love 8 bears. I like disruption. This is just right up my alley. And it will find its place in the hate bear / disruption deck that is already in green. You can even basically utilize it to trigger Heckler, because if they're not using the card and maybe even using them inefficiently, those resources that they have available to them because they really want to keep that card, they're losing it and triggering Hecklers 2 damage on them. On the other hand, it is pseudo discard and keeps their hand size down.
Do you think it only affecting the top card of the deck is an issue, or do you think this is balanced?
Not really. You can play around with it. You can make them force draw cards. So in that regard, yeah, sure. If you know what the card is on top of their deck, because they do mass scouring. If you basically have a good idea that most of the cards are high value cards that you really need, even if they are low cost in general, because in Legacy our curve is rather low, but still those tools that we're using are hyper efficient for the deck plans or for the synergies or for as answers to your opponent. So having to use them on inopportune moments is a rather huge downside.
Mm-hmm. Empty, what do you think of this?
I think for standard, this is going to be a very matchup dependent card. Against a lot of these low to the ground sort of aggro decks that are popular right now, you're going to be rolling the dice a lot of the time as to whether or not they can play it, even when you drop this on turn 2. There is the possibility in the future of running this with like these sort of stacks effects that will prevent your opponent from playing the card. But I don't think there's really too many of those in Spirit for that to really be a deck right now.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll kind of see where this one goes. It's doing pretty well, and I kind of wish it the best. I think it's a really, I'd love to see specifically more stuff like this going forward. Ungung, the Chilling Touch is a 4-drop mind, 1/5 elemental undead arcanist from nowhere in particular. With ward and summon start a turn, set the cost of cards in hands to their base cost, and your opponent's cards cost 1 more for each card they played this turn. So this is a hate bear on a couple different levels, and it's really, really clever in the way it does this. But it also, and I like one thing Spike did really, really masterfully on this was make it a versatile multi-layer design. So you could also use this in a deck that's maybe heavy and off affinity cards to go ahead and remove your own off affinity penalty. You could use this perhaps if you have as counters to, I think, double lift. I don't know how much play that's seeing. You can use this to counter your opponent's double lift. There's a lot of really interesting and goofy things you could do with this guy, and I just absolutely love him. Grief, what do you think of this design?
Does this really nullify off affinity costs?
Because it sets their cost of cards in hand to whatever their base cost is.
Yeah, but base cost is not affiliated to affinity cost.
Well, yeah, because the cost will be 4 plus, or say it's a 4-drop, 4 plus base, and now it will cost 4. It sets the cost equal.
Okay, then.
I think I heard. I
could
could be wrong on that. I thought I heard someone talking about that on Discord.
No, I think Spike talked about it too, that he wanted it to work with off affinity.
Okay, in that case, I said nothing. It's a pretty good hate bear. Outside of that, we've seen designs like these, like Monarch already in the game. They are semi-okay-ish. With Ward, it's definitely a more stickier than Monarch and is only one-sided in that case. So it actually helps you out if they're a spell slinging deck, which at Legacy is pretty much the case, that most of the cards are very hyper efficient, as I already said, for the low cost. And this is just war hate for the top decks or against the top decks, so it's pretty good. On the other hand, it also allows yourself to be protected against certain hate bear strats because it sets those costs back to the base cost at start of turn and on summon. So it actually answers one of our strongest hate bear in the game, which is Outward Oracle.
Yeah. I know Spike, MT, you were just talking about aggro strats. Obviously, that's one of the things that this targets really well. What do you think of this design?
I really like this design. I think like the summon and start of turn effect has a lot of like interesting implications. I'm trying to think if there's any cards that like increase their cost and have a low base cost where resetting it would be good. Nothing really comes to mind. And then of course that second effect like really shuts down all these decks that like to fling little spells or units around like food and action spam, which is just a really nice effect to have on something as sticky as this.
Yeah. I do also want to comment really quickly on the art. I like what Spike did with this. He draws a lot of skulls. Spike draws a lot of skulls, and he draws them very well. And I like the little lattice kind of effect on his on the top of his head there, or the little swirlies. Another Spike card, Feared Fangweaver, is a 3-drop spirit 1/2 undead shadow spider from Penumbra, which is why I was excited about this. Deadly, ambush, and summon, merge this with an allied unit. So this is really interesting. I'm so excited to see Penumbra again. Charian, I haven't seen him around. I missed the guy. But I do really, really absolutely love merge. So I'm glad to see it coming back. And I hope this does well. This also plays into the spiders people have been pushing for. The one thing I'm really curious about with this, and this is because it ties to a card I created once, was this thing can easily, or can with not too much imagination, end up 2-for-1ing something at 3, which is pretty dang efficient. But of course, it does have that caveat of this easier to respond to, et cetera, et cetera. So it reminds me of Sally Says a lot, but better. And I think Sally was also at 3. Oh, I didn't design that. Shadow Knight did, but it was for my realm. MT, what do you think of this?
I'm not really a huge fan. I do like merge, but honestly, playing against Daylings so much has kind of turned me off of the 2-for-1 sort of deadly trading space. You're most likely going to be trying to like put this on the duelists as well in order to get the whole duelist deadly combination, since those are really easy merge targets. And the other thing is it doesn't really work that well with the new direction of spiders, which are more of like a sort of go wide, more or less strategy. They don't really want to be buffing up their units to be good blockers, since they already do blocking so well anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little worried about this as just a source of 2-for-1ing, but I would be interested to actually play with this. It's sitting at 5, so a lot of people like it, and I can definitely see why. But it can get scary. I don't know. Grief, what do you think?
I personally just like and chose it because it's a very simple back to the roots of merge design.
Yeah.
Sure, it can 2-for-1. It's still an initial 3 mana cost on a for buff that gives you one attack, 2 for defense, stat value for your units, and yeah, sure, if you have a duelist, etc., then it's definitely hyper potent. Do we need more simple designs for merge though? Yeah, definitely. And this just fills basically just one niche in our repertoire. And since we don't really know how rotation would be affected moving forward, seeing these kinds of tools in the upcoming rotation, which is near things, since we're already in September, seeing these kinds of fillers is pretty neat.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. The Diet Pyromancer is a 2-drop mine, 3/2 Arcanist from nowhere in particular, with summon, create 3 Diet Fireballs. A Diet Fireball reads very simply, deal 0 damage. For those of you who haven't caught on, I'm going to briefly explain why this card matters. Firstly, pops ward. Secondly, ups your action count for the sake of Vrictic. Now, Vrictic recently got that change, and so having a bunch of cheap actions, even if they do nothing, could end up helping it along. This is also an Arcanist, so that could help. And and also dealing 0 damage. This can plug in possibly as maybe a splash card for the Waxling Target Matters archetype. I think this is interesting. I really liked this idea the first time it came around. I can see why people didn't like it, because it's weird, it's quirky. But I think it's been resubbed from I think maybe even a year ago. I think it has a chance to do better this time. I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks about it. Starting with you, Grief.
Broken.
Okay.
This card creates 3 different created cards that are non-native trigger deck that basically have multiple applications, and one of the worst things that it can do is reduce the cost of your splish, splash, sploosh, burn bullshit in Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
On a stick by 3. You can even use this to just pass your priority to your opponent to stall for what they are doing. Yeah.
So it was actually sitting at 4 or so, I think. And we'll see about this. It's hard to evaluate this one. MT, what do you think about this?
I also think this is too strong.
Okay.
So at a base value for Victor, this just gets you a bunch of passive triggers, makes that way easier. You can also turn these into fuel with Scholar's Disc and stuff. If you're running Tempest or any other action trigger, which land has tons of, this is really strong there as well. And then of course, Plasma Sploosh is always going to be the big one. And it's only paying 1 stat point for this. The body is barely under curve.
May I just hinted matchstick?
Yeah.
Because this
Standards? Oh, I
gives you
can't remember.
fuel for any kind of discard or hand banishing effects.
Yeah.
KM can turn them into cheap tokens to just get real cards out of them.
Okay. So let's try and be constructive here. Is there something that can be done about this card since you guys both think it's broken? MD
Make
mentioned the
those-
body.
Make those fireballs ethereal and only create 2.
Yeah, I really like that suggestion, and I think it kind of plays in a little bit to the stuff, and it gives us a good way to use ethereal. That's a neat idea. MT, what do you think?
I agree with Grief. Either that or make it the body smaller.
Okay, yeah, I could see scaling the body down. Not seeing a 0 on a thing that's about diets, and I don't know, make it 0. 0 calories, 0 flavor. No, a lot of flavor.
It's funny that a diet fireball looks like an avocado.
Oh, wrong button. Working on it, folks. Technical difficulties. I did things out of order is probably what I did. Okay. The Mystic Dragon is a 4-drop mind 4/2 dragon from nowhere in particular with flying, rebound, and summon. This costs 1 permanently. I really, really like this way of creating a sticky unit where it adjusts its own cost. This also plays interestingly, and this is sort of a splashing thing, in all of our reanimator stuff that cares about having really low cost, particularly 1 cost in the case of Yarn. There's a lot of different fun little cute things you could do with it. I also like how we're playing into this flying rebound space with dragons. So all in all, this feels like a very cohesive card that's versatile and has a lot of different applications. So I really, really enjoy this card. I haven't had a lot negative to say about a lot of these designs today. I don't know why. MT, what do you think about this?
Yeah, this is a perfectly fine design. I mean, it's just a pretty standard unit with like that neat little cost reduction effect on the summon. One interesting thing you can do with this is you can play it with Idle Contract, discard it, get the rebound, and then make it 1 in your hand so that you can play it again. It's just a pretty simple combo that you can do with this. But other than that, yeah, just a basic sort of French renewal design.
Grief, what do you think of this?
This will be just a new inclusion for any kind of self-discard or discard value deck in Legacy, because you don't want to play this at first, but utilize it as a discard outlet. Sure, you can try to play it as a 4-cost unit with flying and rebound, but why should you? You basically just want to either discard it first and maybe utilize it later, or if you're able to force play it via cards like Deep-Born Call, etc., you get it for free on the board. It still has this rebound effect because it got milled and not discarded, and basically you got 2 more force play or options to play it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't Deep-Born Call not work though on the initial, since it would be off affinity and cost 5?
It depends on what you're playing off affinity. If it's Deep-Born Call for 5.
That's true.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting how a lot of the applications of this do require splashing. But I really do like cards that do that because it requires you to think about how maybe to use it. Okay. Now let's talk about more about how Charian impacted the game. Sporium Corium's favorite arts. Abhorrotron is a 5-drop strength 2/6 robot supervillain from Karachar. With summon and start a turn, create a Grizzly Beam in hand. When an ally unit dies, refresh 1 mana. The Grizzly Beam deals 2 damage to an ally unit to deal 2 damage to an enemy unit and has Ethereal. So I really, here's what I absolutely love about this design. First of all, new use of Ethereal. I love how we're talking about all these Ethereal designs. This subverts the active problem in Collective in a very interesting and creative way. For those of you who don't know, active units tend to suffer because they're giving up so much of their ability to just stick around there and be in combat. Collective being a very defensively oriented game, it's very useful to need to have around as a blocker, but you also lose it as its ability as an attacker. This says, no, I'm going to give you the ability to use that active. It's a paid active, and it's going to be sitting in your hand, so you could also use it for action triggers. Interestingly enough, I do like how this plays into like the sort of like ally damage thing in strength. A lot of the things I'd want to use this for are in like mind though. Being able to use this in sort of a spell slingery kind of build. And so I wish the token was at least neutral. I can understand maybe the thing being 5, and I'm not quite sure about the body, but I think you guys can probably disagree with me on that. But I really wish the token was neutral. Grief, what do you think?
I have to say the body is kind of weirdly statted.
Yeah.
As a 2/6 for 5. I would have seen at least one more stat point. But still, you're getting a Grizzly Beam, which you don't really use on the turn you're playing the unit anyways, because that's a 7 mana investment. Unless you cheese it, which we'll come to next. On the topic of the Grizzly Beam, 2 mana for Ethereal card that still needs to deal 2 damage to one of your units to deal 2 damage to an opponent to an opposing unit is.
Oh, Grief, you're cutting out. Hold on. Give it a second.
Better?
Okay, go.
Okay. It's kind of costly for what it does.
Yeah.
Considering that you still have to hurt your own units if they don't have any kind of a rage benefit or benefits from dying, which we'll come to next. You'll just pay an upcoming fee for a card that you probably want to discard or utilize for anything else. Now to the actually interesting part of this card, because it's not a Grizzly Beam, it's the last ability on the Abhorrotron. When an ally dies, refresh 1 mana. Not gain 1 mana, so you cannot gain more mana than your max mana currently is, but in combination with that, Grizzly Beam can be a 1 mana refunded card, because at that point, okay, I'm dealing 2 damage to deal 2 damage to a unit, I kill my own unit, refresh 1 mana, but the problem is I cannot chain another Grizzly Beam, because I can only get 1 per turn, and I only got 1 mana, which is cool for PM, but that's it. You want to utilize the last ability for any kind of chain abilities when it comes to killing cards en masse, where you want to play seppuku or want to play any kind of, not shift, what was it? Martial promotion shenanigans, where you can even kill off your glowstones, which grant you mana as well and draw you cards.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun legacy potential, definitely. Makes me long for the days when Mass was totally unnerved. And being able to pull this off with a Mass.
Oh, shit. That would be Mass for free, wouldn't it?
Mass costs 4 and can pitch up to 3 units, but yeah.
It's Mass for 1.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mass was originally 3, so the unnerved version, this would have been way busted. Yeah. Empty, what do you think of this?
I really like the design here. I just think it may be a bit weak.
Yeah.
I mean, like Grief said, at 5 mana, this could probably use an extra stat point or 2. That second effect, like, it can be really strong. I'm just not sure we have enough self-sack like outlets in standard.
Yeah, the standard.
Right now, the standard self-sack strategy is you run the gathering tree with all the chickens, and then you run a unit with charm, and then send all your chickens into the charm unit. It's really funny.
We have a founder statue, not like anyone's running on it.
It's just too slow.
Yeah, it's too slow.
I mean, you can technically utilize that specific strat in a fun deck in Legacy, where you also have the chicken tower. Because when the chicken tower dies, you draw another chicken tower.
What is this card? This card is a legacy chicken card.
It's a legacy chicken card. Oh my god.
I mean, in Legacy, you also have Bloodletter.
Yeah, Bloodletter. Oh my god. Just imagine the shenanigans when you're sitting there and your opponent is playing solitaire with chickens of all things.
Well, it's sitting at 14. I expected to see an update, to be real, because it's probably going to get in, but this thing needs an update. I do like the design a lot.
Can we just have a submitted for your approval flavor update for that card, just to give it a random chicken tribe of all things?
Or just like, well, the other thing on the flavor was, okay, this feels very Sporium. It's a very Sporium card. It managed to avoid being rare very narrowly. Where's the Sporium flavor text on this? Right? That's one of the things he's good at. Playing your strengths, man. Okay. Melting Fervor is a 6-drop strength action from Lux with giving unit +1/+3, then revive an ally in graveyard that costs less than the target's attack. Strength Reanimator, guys. I really, really like any Reanimator design. It's one of my favorite archetypes. And I do think that this very much is a fair, at least in air quotes, fair Reanimator. I could imagine seeing something like this in Magic at it's at 6, which is probably a bit too much. But again, everyone's scared of Reanimator, so 6 is maybe fair. There's not a lot you can really do too busted with this I could think of, but I'm probably missing something. And I really, really enjoy the busted stuff with Reanimator. I think Reanimator should be free to be powerful, not in like the vigorous Moss sense, but maybe in some other sense. Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, so I really, really like the design here. There's a really cool deck you can make where like you run like a sort of hybrid of discard and unit buff in order to get some big stuff in your graveyard, and then use Melting Fervor to like bring that back. And that could be really cool. The thing is, this is 6 mana, which is just too much for this type of effect, especially for the amount of effort you need to put in to even get a unit's attack up high enough for this to really pull in anything impressive. Like, I just don't think this should be 6. It's too much, especially because it's only giving +1 attack, and the unit has to cost less than its attack, so it can even cost equal. You have to go above. It's just very difficult to really build around to make this work.
I do encourage people to read the flavor text. It's really pretty. Grief, what do you think about this?
Let's be honest, this could easily cost 4 mana, considering the power level of our other reanimation/force play cards. Even if we ignore Deep Bone Core, we have a removal attached to a revive of 1-cost unit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like Melting Fervor, but this should cost 3 to 4 mana to actually be useful. 3 is a little bit undercosted, 4 is in the range of Deep Bone Core, and that's one of the most powerful reanimation tools we have in the game.
I know it's not our card, but kind of my baseline for what I think a collective card would be fine at is Zombify from MTG. 4 mana, bring a thing back. Like, that should be about what it does, about where we're at. And so
that'll be too strong though. Just think about it in discard. You just like turn 1 discard Kadar, turn 4 reanimate Kadar and win.
Yeah, well, Kadar's the issue there. I think we can all agree.
Dude, I mean,
we can have one or the other.
Yeah,
we can have Kadar or reanimation. We chose Kadar.
I like vintage and I like legacy, and I especially have a soft spot for collective legacy. But people cannot deal with Grizzlebrand turn 1 reanimation shenanigans here in this community.
Yeah.
So turn 4 Kadar is definitely not in the.
It's not in the cards. I know it isn't. Speaking, since we're making all these Magic the Gathering references, but some of our audience might not understand, let's go talk about Wickerbug. Is a 1-drop strength 1/1 wax insect from Lux. With this as untargetable as long as you aren't the active player. I think, first of all, a very, very, and I know we already have like 2 untargetable S keywords. We have untargetable and ward. This thing can stand to be keyworded. It's really how we should have, like, having a hexproof effect in the game would be really nice, and this is basically how you do it. The only issue is that, of course, it would be a keyword that has another keyword underneath it.
Yeah. Also a keyword that nobody uses and everyone is afraid of.
Well, yeah. For those of you who don't know, this card is basically Slippery Boggle, and this was acknowledged in the subreddit post, ported over in a different way to Collective. And I think this is cute. Of course, a lot of people are probably scared of this effect, and maybe for good reason. Grief, what do you think of this?
One deck, Fusion Protocol KM.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what this thing fuses into, it will have better use for that specific dodging removal effect on hyper efficient mutants than anything that this thing could shit out. This is a very interesting target for self-targeting effects, because that is what this deck actually needed. Target Heldem is lacking good targets and a reason to retarget them without going 5/1 by a random ping effect or bounce. Ward can only help you so far, duelists are rampant, and still, you can just get quote-unquote off-screened by a blanket effect that just dealt with your target unit because it was by proxy just there.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically one of the better targets we can have for that deck.
MD, what do you think of this?
I mean, yeah, this is a great design. I'm both surprised and really happy that it seems to actually be doing pretty good on the sub, since this is the type of effect that can get very scary very easily. But like Grief brought up, this is exactly what Target Heldem needs. Just something to make it less easy for your opponent to completely blow you out when you're playing all your buffs onto one unit. Yeah.
Letting Voltron be Voltron, giving Heldem what he needs. I'm all for it. What was this sitting at? 12. Yeah, that's great.
Ogle can finally happen.
Well, then it's got just it doesn't have enough words on it to really nerf. I mean, they could give it just untargetable, but like seeing this get hit with an update hammer would be really weird. Maybe bump cost. I don't know. And I like that. I like that because I think we should balance around that kind of card. Infiltrate is a 0-drop mind action from nowhere in particular. Give one of your units to your opponent. Deal damage equal to the card's cost to them. Guys, this was sitting at like 0, right, Grief? When you or no, empty. Is this your pick?
Yeah, it's my pick.
Wasn't it sitting at
0?
0?
Yeah.
Tragedy. Okay, guys, come on. First of all, this is a good bit of 0-drop reach in mind. This can, close out the game if you manage to get a decent unit out. So it does encourage you to be unit based. And best of all, it's a donate effect, which means you have to get you can get really creative, give some drawbacks to your opponent, have fun with it. MT, what's your assessment of this card?
Yeah, so it's combining Fling with Donate, which are two effects that I really like.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great way of like combining those two things together. And it makes me really like this card. I do think at 0 mana, it is a bit strong.
Okay.
It's very easy to just like burst your opponent down, especially if you draw multiple of these in mind. Like this can be 0 mana for like 4 to 5 damage pretty easily. And with all the other burn, like it's not going to matter that you give your unit opponent; they're just going to be dead. Yeah. So I do think it costs increase is warranted, but I really like the design.
Yeah, I do too. Like, and I think this especially encourages us to make more units with drawbacks, which I love units with drawbacks. Creative ones especially. This has the potential to be so fun, especially if we end up doing that lose the game DC coming up. That was one of the options. This would be the perfect card to combo into it.
Also with Coil Conductor, you can hit your opponent for like 10 or 11 damage by playing the Conductor down for 1, and then next turn you only draw 1 card. So its cost is only reduced by 1 and it's 10.
Fun combo. So, Grief, do you agree? Cost increase? How do you feel about it?
Cost increase definitely, because this has 2 applications and those are horrifying. In Legacy, this just goes into Henry the Ape. Henry the Ape? Henry the Inquisitive, or how he's called, is basically, oh yeah, I'll at the start of the turn or end of turn, I'll fuck you over by replacing your entire deck with random bullshit from the entire Legacy collection.
Yeah.
You did this with Mischief Maker, which is a monkey. That's why the deck is called Henry the Ape. The problem is this is just Mischief Maker, copy 3 to 6, dealing 1 damage to your opponent, because Henry is a fucking innate card. On the other hand, have you ever thought of Osh donating himself?
Yeah.
Because this is a burn, and this is a burn win con for any kind of burn deck to just get that extra reach of 1 to
and it gives you
12 points of damage for 0 mana.
So yeah, I think 3 is the number. What do you guys feel?
Yeah,
I
2 to 3.
Yeah,
I don't think the Ush thing is a real problem, because like you're already winning when you drop Ush. Like
That's
the only difference is you're ending the game that turn versus the next turn sometimes. So
yeah, and 3 I think is enough to give people an adequate response window for Henry. It going down on 4 then, because Henry does cost 1, right? And so from there, that could be a thing. But yeah, as is, it is part of too many broken combos. I didn't even realize all of the potential stuff you could do with it. But now I'm scared, and I do think it needs to be bumped. But after that, come on, let's have fun. More Ethereal, guys. Haunt of the Mist is a 1-drop mind 1/2 elemental specter from nowhere in particular. With summon, give a card in your hand. When this is played, create an ethereal copy of this in hand. Give a card in your hand. When this is played, create an ethereal copy. Okay, so it gives you a means to quickly whirl down 2 copies of a card. But you have to play them on the same turn. This is really cute. I like the BQ-GAN thing. Again, this one's a little more abstract, but I feel like this is a birdie, and like the tribe doesn't reflect that. I don't know what this is. Maybe this one's maybe this is a bad BQ-GAN. It's hard to tell. Another fun use of Ethereal, and I think I like what this is building up to. As far as immediate uses, obviously Arcanist, either getting multiples of your Arcanist or getting your Vrick passive off. Those are the super obvious things. Less obvious things, I could also maybe see this running in just a fun deck with a bunch of Dunewalkers, getting the cheaper Dunewalkers out, maybe helping your Ash procs. What else are we thinking with this? Grief, what do you think?
Actions aren't limited with that card, so you can actually utilize 0-cost actions, 1-cost actions, tutors, whatever. Additionally, stuff like stompers and shit that reduce their cost to 0 while having static conditions that don't have to be checked continuously, like drawing cards per turn, etc., can be copied and played. You have basically combo potential with stuff like multiple copies of what's it called? King?
Yeah. One thing this could help with the King combo, I just realized, is if you get 2, I'd have to check the order these are played in. If you have 2 Haunt of the Mists, you can definitely chain them into each other infinitely.
yeah.
Or you might be able to.
Because it's a when this is played trigger. So that
Yeah,
should
so
go
I don't know
off
if that
before
happens
the summon.
before or after the summon, and it matters. If you have 3, you could definitely do it. And 2, I think you can also do it. I'd have to check which order they happen in. Or you could also use a bounce effect to definitely do it with 2. So there's a couple different ways to have these infinitely chain into each other, which is really cute and really tickles me, and I'd be really excited to see if anyone can do something with that. Sorry, Grief, keep going.
No, basically, I think I hear Severs somewhere giggling just because of what this potential thing can actually break in Legacy.
Yeah.
And in Standard.
Empty, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a card that has a ton of potential. Basically, anytime a card costs 0, this is going to be really, really good with it. So like Bloodletter, you can run this in food very easily, since that, like with Dust Sport, you can reduce your food to cost 0. And that makes it very strong. Or just like getting another Ring the Bell is also really good. Yeah, I think it may be a bit too strong, especially at 1/2.
I can maybe agree with that assessment. It definitely does offer up so much cool combo potential, and I really, really like combo, and I'd love to see more combo cards in the game. So,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I do feel like there's a birdie in that art, but I guess that could be a ghosty as well. It's the problem with VQ game is it's not actually drawing anything; it's just drawing. Anyways, I'm gonna stop the share because I do believe that was our last pick. This was a fun week. I absolutely love seeing all the new Ethereal designs. I really do hope that that kind of sinks in and we see more of those. And who knows? I could be wrong and we could see some cool Awaken stuff in the future. So thank you very much to both of my hosts for being here today and joining me. What's that necklace, Grief?
Oh, that's now I'm put on the spot. Wait a second.
Grief's gonna show us his necklace.
Showing you my necklace. One is first of all is a gold necklace that I got from my grandma. It used to belong to my grandfather, and the elephant was one of the drinks that I had when I was a small child, and the other one was a present from my grandmother because it's because my what was it? The birth sign?
Your
English?
Okay. Zodiac?
Yeah, Zodiac. The Zodiac is Virgo, so therefore she
I see.
gifted me that one. So,
That's very neat. Okay.
Yeah.
Brief aside. Thank you very much to my host for being on the show. Like, comment, and subscribe. Remind me why I'm doing the show. Keep on playing collective and keep on voting on cards. Bye.
Bye.